Hello, everybody. It is another episode of Let There Be Talk. It is Monday, January 29th. I hope you guys are all good. I hope you had a great weekend. We got a fantastic guest here for you today. Very rare, 2 weeks in a row, I have a comedian on. Very rare that I have a comedian on this show. I've said it over and over. Mark Maron has interviewed comedians for years, and he's done a fantastic job. Next level. The guy is the king at it. So I never really wanted to get into that. But once in a while, I have to have a comedian on because they inspired me in a certain way, or they influenced me, or they moved me, or that's all three of those are the same, right? Anyway, my guest today is definitely all three of those. His name is Duff Davidoff, and I'll tell you something. Duff Davidoff is one of my favorite all-time comedians and humans. Before I did comedy, when I was kind of in this kind of no man's land of after playing music of 25 years and trying to figure out my life, working at Harley Davidson and stuff, I was still going out in Hollywood. My good friend Jay Davis was putting on incredible comedy shows at the Laugh Factory, and he would invite me down every Tuesday, and that's where I started to see some of the best comedy of my life around, I think, 2006, 7, 8, right in there. And one night I was in there, and this man stepped on stage, and I was like, holy shit, this guy is fire. I was laughing my ass off, and every time I see this guy to this day, I still fucking laugh. And it's hard to do once you're in the business because, you know, you're around it all the time. You kind of get desensitized, but not when this man steps on stage. Every time I stop and I listen and I watch and I learn. And Duff Davidoff is definitely somebody, if you don't know him, you should know him. He's been in shitloads of TV. He's got 2 specials out. He's got a brand new book out called Road Dog that I recommend you read. It is just incredible. The stories in it are amazing, man. If you liked Motley Crue, The Dirt, you're going to love Duff Davidoff's Road Dog because it really paints a picture, man. It was great to sit down with him. He moved back to New York, so I only get to see him every few months or so. I used to see him every night at the store, and he's one of the few people that I really love talking to because I felt like I was getting smarter as I listened to him talk. He's a very smart, interesting guy. And he talks about different stuff, which is great. Like I get a lot of people that talk music and stuff like that. So it's nice to sit down with somebody that's not from that world and really do a little bit of, conversation, ping pong, and just back and forth. I love that, man. When you can sit down with somebody and have a magical conversation. I think that's why podcasts are so popular. You know, people don't talk to each other anymore. They don't talk on the phone. They don't talk in public. Everything's text or emails. And I tell you, my brain really, it really gets high, as corny as that sounds, on a good conversation, man. And whenever I'm talking to Dove, guaranteed I'm going to have a great conversation. I learn a lot from this man. You can see him all the time at the Comedy Cellar, or you can see him on TV on the show Shades of Blue, which, of course, is my friend Drea. And also J-Lo. I don't know J-Lo, but J-Lo is the star of that show. And Ray Liotta. A fantastic television show. I caught a couple episodes when I interviewed Drea. Anyway. What a great guy to have, man. He has got some great stories. He owned a building that David Lee Roth rented an apartment from him, and that's incredible. Wow, David Lee Roth story out of nowhere. You know what I mean? David Lee Roth just keeps coming on, man. Look at all the people here tonight. Diamond Dave, yes indeed. Diamond Dave, he tells great stories of growing up in Jersey in a junkyard, and also some of his regrets early on in comedy. All kinds of great stuff. It's not just, if you're not a comic, it doesn't matter. This guy is definitely going to grab you. Okay, before I do get into that episode, I want to thank Dov for doing it. Let's give some shout outs to some incredible people that donated to the podcast this week, keeping the wheels greased. This guy right here coming through strong. Christopher Timmons, you fucking rock, my man. Timothy Mitchell and Michael Fernandez. All three of you are fire. If you want to donate to the podcast, hit patreon.com/Dean Del Rey. It's anything helps, man. Don't have a Starbucks once a month. Throw it towards the podcast and keep it rocking, What else we got? I wanted to give you guys a little heads up on some music I've been listening to. I want to give some shout outs to some people out there playing rock and roll, driving around in America in vans, doing it old school grassroots style. This is for all you van rockers. Angela Pearly and the Howlin' Moons. Wow, I heard your record and it was great. Homemade Vision. Check it out, people, on iTunes. Angela Pearly and the Howlin' Moons. Please get a pen too, because I get millions of emails going, not millions, but people going, hey man, I missed what you were saying. What was that band? And just write it down real quick. You know what I mean? Anyway, Black Wizard. Wow, they emailed me, said they listened to the podcast over there in Europe. And Black Wizard, they're doing it in a van out there, rocking and rolling, and their record is great. Hero Jr., of course, touring all over America, always tearing it up, showing up and supporting, coming to the Del Rey shows. Hero Jr., fantastic. Here's a band that I'm really loving right now, brand new, called Shame. Record is called Songs of Praise, and man, this record has been on heavy rotation here at the Del Hut. The Del Rey Hut. Marcus King got this record a couple years ago, gave it one spin, and then just kind of moved on. It came around when I had way too much music on my plate, which sometimes can happen. And then Josh Wolf sent me over this song called Rita Is Gone. And I was like, wow, that shit's great. Went to go download it, realized I already had it like a fool, started spinning this record and got addicted to this thing. And I have been listening to this record nonstop. It came out all the way in 2016, but holy shit, is it fire. Of course, he is a prodigy of Warren Haynes, and you can hear some of that good flavor in there. This guy's voice and his guitar playing, this is exactly the type of music I would be doing if I wasn't doing comedy. It would be out there what I call soul rock. And I've always been a sucker for soul rock. There's bands out there that I love. Of course, Black Crowes I consider soul rock from the Sometimes Salvation style of songwriting. Also, a band I used to love called Sweet Vine. They played some amazing soul rock. St. Paul and the Broken Bones, amazing soul rock. I love that. I mean, I love all types of music. But if I was in a band at 52 years old, I would definitely be out there going a little bit Terrence Trent D'Arby meets Allman Brothers meets some Dead. That would probably be what my band would be whipped up in a blender and try to spit out some kind of originality on that. Anyway, Marcus King Band, a song that absolutely destroyed me was The Man You Didn't Know. I just can't believe how great the lyrics are. Shout out to you, and I hope to get you on the podcast, brother, when you're here at the Will Turn with Chris Robinson. Let's see. One more record that's just been knocking me out and worth a vinyl purchase 100%. Ty Segall. I've been following him for years. Everybody's always, Ty Segall. Yep. I know who Ty Segall is. Been rocking him for years. But this new record, Freedom's Goblin. Just fucking love the title. It's a double record, and it is all smoking. This guy, he gives me inspiration on writing as far as comedy. I want to start just really trying to put some product out there, you know. I've been thinking about somehow doing vignettes, maybe 10-minute little things out there. That's all that people's brains can accept. And perfect example, I never put anything on YouTube because, you know, what for? I like mystique, but I did put a 1-minute clip on my Instagram from the record that's coming out, my comedy record. And man, it already has like 9,000 views. So that's kind of cool. Which, by the way, everybody's going, when is your record coming out? We're mixing it this week. Then we got to get it mastered. Then we got to get it pressed. It will be worldwide because it's coming out on the great Bong Load record company. Bong Load, you know, Tom Rothrock had him on here. Bong Load is the incredible indie label that found Beck and produced Loser Baby. Also did Elliott Smith records. Badly Drawn Boy, some Masters of Reality, My Hero Chris Goss. What a label to be included on. So that will be in record stores. So you don't have to worry too much about is it going to be around. We are going to have a special pre-order for people, but I'll get into that later. But that's a little bit of what's going on with the record. This podcast is brought to you by my fantastic sponsor, TLG Auto. If you're going to buy a Porsche, do not buy it without getting it checked out. If you're in the Los Angeles area, I recommend nobody more than TLG Auto. Marco, you know, he was on the podcast, remember? And this guy knows everything about Porsche. They've been there since 1978. His father started the business. Now he carries it on, and he is a wizard with the wrench. Go see TLG Auto. Maybe you need a tune-up. Maybe your Porsche, you need a spot to go all the time. You don't trust your mechanic. Go to TLG Auto. Hit them up on Instagram. They're throwing all kinds of great photos up. And if you tell them you heard about it here, you'll get a little special rate there. So hit them up, TLG Auto, for your Porsche needs. Also, the fantastic Headstrong amps. Yes, you want to get a boutique amp. You know how much I love amplifiers. I love boutique amps. Matter of fact, I'm moving here, and I finally found my Guitar Player magazine that had all the boutique amp shootout in it. When is this from here? I want to see. February 97. This, if you can find this issue of Guitar Player, it has 23 boutique tube amps rated and reviewed. And it's one of my, I still own this thing because it's so great. You get to see that whole history of boutique amps. And Headstrong is one of the best of all time. If you want a great tweed Deluxe, which I have, it's knocking me out. You want to sound like Keith Richards or Neil Young, get that. They also do the blackface thing, unbelievable. Maybe you want like a deluxe reverb style or whatever. You can also customize some, cross-pollinate if you want to do so. Cross-pollinate. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, those are my great sponsors today on this episode. I love all you guys. If you want to see some live shows, Arizona just got added to the calendar. House of Comedy, May 17th through the 20th. Get your tickets now. All the links are on my website, deandelray.com. Irvine Improv this Wednesday and Thursday, or is it Tuesday? I don't know. It's the 30th and 31st with Bill Burr. Those are sold out, but I'm just telling you, go to Irvine Improv. If you're going to that show, go early because I'm on it. Buffalo Helium, March 8, 9, and 10. I'm coming your way, Buffalo. Come on out to that. Those are the shows coming up. I love all you guys. Keep leaving a review. I'm past 1,000. I'm at 1,008 reviews on iTunes. Pretty fucking cool. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the new YouTube channel for all your Let There Be Talk back episodes, all on YouTube. That's Dean Del Rey, and you can find the link in my Twitter bio. I love you guys. Keep the candles lit. Here we go. Dov Davidoff. right, here we are, another episode of Let There Be Talk. One of my favorite humans on the planet is my guest today. I've been trying to have him on for 2-3 years, Duff Davidoff.
Yes, sir. Hey, dude. Yeah.
Dude, this is what I love about New York is, you know, people say, hey, where do you do your podcast? And I'm like, well, I'll just come to you.
Yeah.
Because it really takes me to different areas of New York. So here I am at your place, and this is amazing. You know, like, you own this place, right?
The building, yeah.
You own the building.
Yeah.
And when did you buy it?
A few years ago.
A few years ago? Like, you just said, I want to buy a building?
Well, I just thought it made sense. I had done my first deal a long time ago, so I've been sort of in the business, so to speak, for a long time. So,
real estate?
Yeah. So it for me, it made sense for a number of reasons. We don't have to get into technically, but
of course,
yeah. You know, it's close enough where the A train's at. You can be in downtown Manhattan in 4 stops.
Is that right?
It's an express train. Yeah. And so it all just depends on where you're at and how long it takes to get there. And so it made sense.
Yeah.
You know, but
that's what I'm learning. Yeah. Like, as I'm here, you know, you're like, well, this is great. And then you go, oh, the trains suck at night to come back, you know?
It's all logistics.
It really is. It really is. What area are we in? It's Brooklyn.
Right outside of Clinton Hill, sort of the western part of Bed-Stuy, Clinton Hill.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, to me, I'm starting to learn the areas, but like, I'm over in Fort Greene right now. But what do you got? You got like Fort Greene, you got Greenpoint.
Greenpoint is the northernmost part of Brooklyn, right over the river from Greenpoint, or the water, is Queens, and so you're here. You're south of that here, it goes.
Williamsburg's first.
Well, coming from, it just depends on where you start. But if you're the western edge next to Manhattan, it goes Williamsburg and then Bushwick east,
right.
And then a little south of there, it goes sort of Dumbo and then Fort Greene and then Clinton Hill, Bed-Stuy, all the way out to East New York.
Dumbo's hot right now, right?
Dumbo's been hot for a while, and I mean hot, you know, in terms of how much they charge per square foot to live there. But it's but I don't know that it makes that much sense. You know, it's a bit of an enclave down there. You're close to the F train. I mean, it's nice. It's relatively convenient, but it doesn't seem as nice as it is expensive.
Right,
you know?
Right.
Which is really the key.
How did you find this place? Did you just get a realtor and you're like, all right, I'm ready?
No. I was just sourcing through different listings and information, and I knew a couple of guys who were building things in the area, and I thought this could be an interesting area because of where it lines up on the train, and also the housing stock. It's a lot of these beautiful old brownstones, and people don't realize. And so as things, you know, shift, it's like neighborhoods have a whole life unto themselves, you know, which is they sort of, along with all the other macroeconomics. So, you know, the same neighborhood that was built for like wealthy white landowners goes into when there was white flight. Like, I don't know. I think I haven't read that Robert Moses stuff in a while, but when Whitey had access to cars and was moving out to Long Island, suddenly all of the black people in some areas, Latin in some areas, but it was this sort of white flight. And then Whitey starts to want to come back in, and Manhattan's too expensive for Whitey at this point. And then they start to move across the river. Williamsburg was an industrial shithole for a long time.
Right.
And then it just turns into these things, provided that Manhattan is still an economic generator. Because if they go out of business, everybody goes out of business.
Right,
you know?
Right. It's an interesting thing, you know. It's like I only know I've had a couple property owners on my podcast. One being Mark Norman, who just bought his first place. And he wanted to be in the city and all that. Yeah. But when you look at this, man, it's like, this is great. You know what you got here. And immediately, you know, you go like, oh yeah, this is killer. And it really does matter how many feet you are from from
the train.
Oh man, because I'm
depending on your walk, you could be right. You could be much closer to downtown Manhattan, but depending on your walk, if the walk to the train takes 20 minutes,
Yep.
or 5, you
Yeah.
may as well just be further out and closer to the train. You know, it just
You're
depends
right.
on what you're doing.
You're right,
It's all
because
logistics.
I walk like a good 20 minutes from Fort Greene to the decab
Yeah.
station, and I'm like, man, this is far. It's
Yeah.
so dumb, right?
Well, no, it's all relative.
Yeah.
I mean, also, because it's lower density around here, right? Most things are 3 and 4 floors.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right. So I can find parking here almost 7 days a week.
Yeah, because
so it
there's not
allows me.
80 people in a building.
Right.
Now, you have a car out here.
I drive into the clubs whenever I go to the city. Listen, if somebody's working a 9 to 5, then they have to do that rush hour thing.
Yeah.
And then Manhattan's very prohibitive for a car if you got to go to Midtown.
Right.
But if you're going to the Comedy Cellar at night or somewhere downtown Manhattan, it's perfectly
There's tons
reasonable.
of parking. I can't
Tons of
believe it.
parking.
Like, it blows my mind every night when I come out of the stand and say a comic's giving me a ride over to the
Parking
cellar.
up and down the streets.
Yeah, they go, my car's right here. I'm like, what? Yeah.
Well, they're limited. It's only no parking or limited parking, like an hour or 2 hours until 10 p.m. And after that, you can park anytime, anywhere for the most part.
So you just street park your car.
Street park.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you can find it, because I grew up in San Francisco, and it'd be like, if you didn't have a garage, you're circling the neighborhood because people are home from 7 p.m. on.
You can't park most places. I mean, there's most places in Brooklyn you have to, listen, if you want to park in the East Village, you can go wait for alternate side of the street parking. But then, you don't have the freedom to get in and out of where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you had a building before this, right?
Yeah, no, I started a long time ago. I bought a little place on the Lower East Side for a relatively small amount of money, and then refied and did another deal, and then did another deal, and that's how I started.
Didn't David Lee Roth live in one of your buildings?
Yeah. Dave was, we got friendlies.
Where was that at?
On Ludlow and Rivington on the Lower East Side, 133 Ludlow Street.
And you owned the building, and this guy...
It was a little 3-floor building.
Yeah.
And it had four apartments and a little studio, and then and a restaurant downstairs. And Dave was looking for a place.
Did you find out from the seller, or did he just blind you like, hey, I'm looking for a place to rent, and hit you on an ad?
Oh, no. We were just talking.
Oh, at the cellar or something?
At the cellar. We were just talking.
Because his uncle owned Cafe Wa, right?
That's right. And, Dave, we were just having a drink, I think. And then we ended up talking. Then we ended up meeting up the next day, and we walked over to my place, and so Dave ended up living there for, probably 2 years. I mean, we shared a deck for 2 years.
That's nuts, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest rock star from the 70s to the 80s,
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know much about pop culture or music in general in a specific way. I know you have an encyclopedic knowledge of all
Yeah,
these
I love
things.
it.
But and it's interesting to me, but I don't know much about it. And maybe that's one of the reasons we were able to just hang out. But it's
was that the era where he was being an EMT?
Yeah, he was going through a time in his life where he felt like he was training to become an EMT, and then also he was working on getting a helicopter license.
Oh, wow. Bill Burr style. Bill Burr just got it.
Before Bill Burr.
Yeah, of course.
Bill Burr did it David Lee Roth style.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, that's exactly what happened. Yeah. And I actually went up in Dave's first helicopter. We circled the Chrysler building in the helicopter, up above, and the pilot was there, but Dave was at the controls.
Yeah, same with me. I just flew to a gig with Burr.
Yeah, there you go.
He flew us to San Diego, but the pilot was there.
Oh, yeah.
But, there's that thing in your mind where you're like...
why did Bill need does he need the pilot there in order to rent the chopper?
That's a good question.
Because I thought if you're going to rent the chopper...
He can fly solo. He can fly solo.
He does have a solo license.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
he does solos because you have to do solos to pass your thing. But I think it was a $4 million chopper.
Okay.
And, it's one of these crazy state-of-the-art ones. You get in, it's giant. It's like a limousine in there. Yeah. And I think that it's just better to go with your instructor when you're, still relatively new.
Yeah.
But
sure.
It was an interesting thing because I realized in my whole life, I'm 51, and I feel like I've done everything. Yeah. Not like I'm bragging, but I've really lived this life. And as I sat in it, I go, well, I've never been in a helicopter.
Yes.
And then as it starts to go up, and you're
weird.
Like, and that's Burr, who's one of my great friends.
Yeah.
But does he know how to fly this?
I know. So, you can't help but ask that.
Yeah, so he tilts up, and we're going right over the Hollywood sign right away because we left out of Burbank, and I was like, holy shit. It kind of took me about 10 minutes, and then I was like, if I go down, I go down. I just got it out of my head, it'd be a weird death.
Well, but also, it's not like you jumped in there and you guys were high and the pilot wasn't there.
Not at all.
It was a situation.
Right. But helicopters, no matter how great they are, still feel hoopty.
You're 100% right.
I mean, one movement, like when they dip and do this shit, you're like, whoa.
I completely agree. Your body is telling you that this thing shouldn't be lifting off the ground.
Yeah.
And two, you shouldn't be in it.
Yeah.
And so you have to organize that experience because every aspect of that experience is, or your mind.
Yeah.
Certainly there's the conscious mind and then there's the unconscious mind, which is often more powerful. And every aspect of the unconscious mind is going, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Let's not do this.
Yeah, and especially as you get older, like younger, you're like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Like I jumped out of planes. And recently,
I did that,
Burr and I were in a little shit plane going to this gig. And I told Bill, I jumped out of one of these before. Yeah. And right now, I don't even want to be in this plane. I can't believe I went up 20,000 feet or whatever and jumped out,
Well, when you have a parachute, it's almost like, there's a plan B.
Yeah.
But in a chopper, man,
I know.
I don't know.
Yeah. Then that's really weird is Dave is your pilot because I had opened some gigs with Dave and I've worshiped Dave all my life. And one thing I noticed about Dave when I was around him and talked to him was he's a lot like a child actor where I don't really know who he is. He's been famous all his life. He was on all the time. Yeah. And I wondered what he would be like off, and an EMT, I don't think he's like, all right, look at all the people here tonight. You know what I mean? Like giving CPR to a guy. I mean, you got to see another side of him, which is interesting.
Well, also, I don't remember us ever talking about music.
Right.
And we never talked about...
He's a very smart guy.
Dave's an interesting dude, and he's very curious, and we shared some books, and then we would hang out on the deck on a pretty regular basis,
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, it's funny, it's just, it was just hanging out, and then we'd sometimes walk to get something to eat, and we didn't, it's like... Yeah,
it's wild. The reason I bring that up is I look at Dave and think of him as this rock star.
Yeah.
And when I first started seeing you do comedy, which, by the way, I don't have a lot of comics on. It's it's not really my thing because Marin kills it with that. That's his thing. And when I started, I was like, well, I want to have musicians on or something. Yeah. But once in a while, there's very key people in my life. I have people on the show that inspired me throughout my life. Yeah. And I do remember early on being at the Laugh Factory. And here comes this guy coming on, and he's pretty wacky and bizarre. And it was you, and you're doing this bit about the bicycle seat. And I was laughing so fucking hard. Yeah. And it really took me back to the early days of me loving comedy of Bobcat, Yeah. And I wasn't quite sure, is this Dove? Is this guy crazy, or is it a character?
I know what you mean. I think early on, it happened very organically. It was never something I thought about. That rhythm just sort of happened.
Right.
And I've since really I guess drifted away from a prescribed rhythm, but I'm trying to just talk more. I mean, there's something about stand-up, I mean, the further that we can get into our own voice, but then we need to define our own voice and what do we want to talk about, and I don't know, sort of be rigorous enough with our thoughts. And then if somebody was doing something that felt character-ish,
right.
I guess some people have done that well. I'm trying to think.
Well, you've got these
people.
guys like, let's say, Larry the Cable Man. That's the extreme.
Right.
And then you've got like Andy Kaufman was a thing that was really genius, but no one still to this day knows who Kaufman is. And you've got
even I mean, it's not charactery, but when Chappelle is sort of really laughing at his own jokes and going into that, it's you're acting something out in a way that is exaggerated, right? It's like a kind of and so there was an exaggeration. It was never a character, but it's
even if Chris Rock is working material, he is not the Chris Rock that you see on HBO.
Absolutely not. He's talking through material. Then when you see him up there, he's a preacher.
Yeah. And I really like that mellow Chris Rock. When he's on there, he's like, when he's working
he's
shit, he's very vulnerable.
Yep.
He doesn't know if the material is going to work. Yep. And even at that state of his career, you're looking at it like, wow, he's not even sure, which is awesome to see.
Yep. Yeah, and when he performs it, it's different from when he's talking his way through it. And it's, it's a funny process, all of any kind of art, I would imagine, you know? But certainly with stand-up, you're trying to find your own voice, but at the same time, it's got to be heightened. I mean, because... you have to perform it, right?
Yeah.
So when Bill Burr goes on, it's Bill. That's how he is. But obviously, when you work your way through material and it becomes an act, it's a performance. I mean, you're acting out something that you wrote, often in your own voice. But it's it's kind of an interesting process.
It really is. When you start out, how long have you been doing comedy?
A long time. I mean, 20 years.
Man, 20 years. Where do you start? In New York?
Yeah, New York City. Yeah. The first gig I ever did was in the Village, and it was like a friend of a friend was putting on a show.
And what makes you want to do it? Do you see who were your guys?
That's what I wrote the book about, right? Like, so I wrote that I had a strange. No, I was never.
You got a book out.
Yeah, I was never a fan of. I had never seen stand-up comedy.
Well, this is cool. Road
it just came out
Dog.
last month. Yeah.
Wow, dope.
But it's real personal, and it's a memoir, a lot of emotional stuff. But it's I grew up in my father was this uneducated Jewish business guy from the Bronx, and my mother was a hippie intellectual wasp from California. She was on her way to teach piano in India when she stopped off to visit her friend of hers in Jersey, who was this lesbian woman who owned a monkey, and they were renting an old house.
Right.
From my father, and that's how they met. My mother was wrapped up in a commune. They were convinced that the apocalypse was inevitable,
right?
And they were building earth-integrated housing and buying freeze-dried food. But I grew up in this junkyard. It was a very strange environment, and trying to reconcile all these things. I think we may have touched on this before, but that's how I got into stand-up. I never got into stand-up because I was a fan of stand-up. Or a comedian.
Like you weren't watching back then those like HBO or Night at the Improv.
Never, pop culture is never. I didn't grow up with it, so it's never had that imprint on my consciousness.
What were you into back then? Like books, or were you a nerd?
No books. No, I was thrown out of high school. I mean, but before that, I was. I lived across the street from a junkyard. I had this little motorcycle I would rip around on, but there was no cultural thing that I was into.
That's bizarre, question. Right? Because you got to think like, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 51.
44.
44. So what do you grow up in the heat of the 80s? So it's hip hop is blowing up. Some of that
sort of Guido-y Jersey culture was part. So in terms of music, I was like listening to freestyle. My best friend was a Puerto Rican kid. So there was that kind of vibe, and it was, but no, there was no. In terms of a pop cultural influence, no, I had no thing,
Wow. So you just go on and you like, are your bits like you are now, or were you totally different back then?
No, I was just trying to find out who I was and what to talk about. And a lot of comedy for me was about trying to reconcile shit, Yeah. I was the first time I did comedy. I was 21 years old. I was working on Wall Street on the floor of the stock exchange, and then
no shit.
Yeah, and then somebody asked me to do it,
Well, you're kicked out of high school.
I was thrown out of high school.
Yeah, and you land on Wall Street.
Yeah, then I went to Rutgers in Newark for a little while, and then I land on Wall Street on the floor of the exchange where people are screaming in the middle with the tickets, and all.
Wow.
And then, and I used to run my mouth. I was a real wise ass from an early age, so to speak. And somebody asked me to do stand up, and I said, yeah, I'll try. They had a show.
Yeah.
I went up and did it. I mean, I wasn't good, but it was a language that I felt like I could speak, probably, if I worked on it, the kind of thing.
Yeah. Were you going around the cellar back then? Because that's what year is that? Like,
No, I don't remember going to the cellar. I do remember drifting into the Boston or the cellar at one point when I was like 17 or 18 or something. Like, I was in from Jersey and I was walking around the village, that kind of thing. But very, not in a way that I remember so well,
Yeah, so you couldn't go like, oh, these are the guys back then.
No, nothing like that. I was never a fan.
Right.
So I never followed anyone. I never remember even watching stand-up at all before I did stand-up. I was vaguely aware of,
That's insane because you have to watch a little bit to know how to do it, right? Like, I mean.
Well, certainly, I guess. Let me see. I mean, if I was the 17 in 91 and then.
That's like Dice.
And then I did it in 94. Sure, I remember Dice. Certainly, I remember hearing Dice.
Kinnison.
Yeah, like flipping through a channel. Never. Yeah. Kinnison. Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying in a secondary way, it was in the kind of thing where you sat down and thought about it.
Yeah.
As much as you understood that it was there. It was out there in the ether. I knew very well that television existed, and I remember watching Miami Vice.
Yeah.
But I don't remember ever getting into television. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or knowing different shows or being able to reference stuff from the 80s. Like, I don't have that a lot of people have that I run into.
That's wild.
In this business.
You're just walking around like a shell.
Well, no, I was like, my mother was on a commune, right? And my father was this guy in a junkyard, and we had a little TV. Nobody ever discussed it. There was never music on in the house.
Brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have one brother who had a similar experience with me. He's 2 years younger than I am. There's no imprint of pop culture in any of our lives, and my mother and my brother, and no one talks about it. None of us have TV hooked up to, like we have Netflix now, things like that, but for a while, it was just basic cable. I don't know. It's not.
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to you and you're like, I was talking to some guy here a couple nights ago. He's in a band called the Kromaggs. You know them?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
That? And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
like
Yeah, no.
That's pretty wild, man.
Yeah, I have a lot of those experiences, but it's.
Once you get up going.
Yeah.
Some years go by, and when do you start going to the cellar?
When I was I started doing stand up and acting stuff, and then I started doing television commercials.
What was some of the early acting? Because the funny story that I have about you is here I see you at the factory, and we're talking 2006 because I don't start till 2009, 10 there. But I'm there, and then about a week later, I open my front door. I'm in the Hollywood Hills, and you're shooting a TV show, and I go, "That's that fucking guy." And you were with the Fly guy,
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, and you were a cop in front of my house.
Yeah,
and I was just waking up, and I was like, what? "That's that fucking guy."
That's right. Yeah, that.
What
NBC
was that show called?
It was a show called Reigns. It was a detective show, and I played a cop, and that was the first series I got, and I did that for a while. But before that, in New York, I was making a living doing commercials.
How'd you get into that?
Mid-20s. A buddy of mine was an actor.
Right.
Yeah, I started doing comedy, and then I met up with this dude who was an actor, and I thought, oh, that seems interesting. And I started taking a class, you know, that kind of thing, because the environment I come from. There was no creative voice in that whole world. A junkyard in Jersey, it's a very specific kind of blue-collar world.
Right.
And so I never remember connecting with any of those ideas. It's not like, in the village, there are places you grow up where at least you know of it.
Right.
Like it exists.
Yeah.
Not where I grew up. And so So that was an interesting process, watching people try to relate to one another. That aspect of acting was interesting. And
acting is so weird to me because
it's weird, yeah.
You know what the other person's going to say, and I think the whole skill is to act like you don't know. That's the bottom line of acting.
In some ways, I guess, but for me, it's easy to act like I don't know because if you really listen intensely, you can find things in it, and then you begin responding like you would in life,
right?
And then you stop appearing as though you're acting or something,
right?
But anyway, it was like and so, but stand up was a way to like with acting. Obviously, it's many things have to happen before there's a job or even work.
Totally.
And so I always love the idea of being a bit more self-deterministic. Like if I can write it and go up and do it, then that needs to be the priority.
Then the other shit's just gravy because you're like, well, I didn't get that TV show, but I'm going on tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And at least I get to do it, do the thing in stand-up. And so obviously, And so I continued to, do stand-up and also...
You start doing a bunch of commercials?
I did, yeah. I started making a living doing it in my 20s. I did a Budweiser commercial, for the Super Bowl, stuff like that, and then Heineken, like some good campaigns.
Back when the money was good.
Back when money was good, and you would get paid through residuals. I guess you still do, but it was more network TV then.
Right.
Yeah. And so the money was actually good. And then I moved to L.A., and I couldn't stand the commercial calls. There were so many people in the room, and you had to wait,
So that's a big jump, though. Now, with your...
But I moved to L.A. with that series, with that series Reigns.
Oh, okay. So when I first see you, you're really living in New York, but you move out to do the series, so you're doing comedy.
I just moved to L.A., yeah.
Now, with your original commercial money, is that how you buy your first building?
No, when my father died and we sold the junkyard, there was some money around, and the building was. I borrowed. I didn't borrow the money from my brother, and then we put the money down. The whole building was $700,000.
Wow!
So then we borrowed the rest from the bank.
Right.
And
you still got that building?
Well, I sold it and did another deal. I refinanced it, then that, and then sold it, and then did another deal since then. And so that was how I treated that. But as far as the comedy seller, it was. Before I moved to LA, I was like doing commercials and then I did the Aspen Comedy Festival.
Oh, wow.
And so.
You got a manager back then?
I had just gotten a manager and I forget how. It was like some competition, some contesty kind of thing.
Yeah.
One of those guys. And then when I got Aspen, I forget how I got an audition there. And just one thing leads to another, that kind of thing. I don't know. It's a strange business.
It really is, right?
It's a strange landscape because you just don't know what works and what doesn't. And then, it's weird.
Zero security.
Oh, yeah, zero. And then, and even, people that, the funny thing is like, it's never... Even if you're doing a series and you pitch and I have my own, deals and all that, there's no security. I guess, if you're Will Smith or something, there's security. But not too many rungs below that before there's no security. It's like, working actors worried about their next job for the most part. It's like,
I saw Ray Romano go on 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
And, you got to think about how he has one of the biggest TV shows going.
Oh, those sitcoms, but that's pure lottery stuff. Totally. Ray's a talented guy, and he's super likable. He's a great guy.
He had a TV show called Men of a Certain Age, and I thought it was fantastic. It was on TBS, and the writing was spectacular, and he was amazing. He's also incredible on The Big Sick.
Yeah, I heard about that.
But it's awesome. My point is, he can always go back to stand-up as long as you stay relevant and you're not like out of your mind like, hey,
And that's how he relates to the world, too, It's like, luckily he's not it's not a money grab, he's not, and so I think it's just a part of relating to the world too, it's like, so it's funny, art and commerce and trying to bring it together in such a way that, it's, Yeah, it's an odd landscape.
Once you get out to L.A., you go to the Comedy Store. The Comedy Store was different back then, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it was a ghost town when I was going around.
It was
there.
more of a ghost town, yeah. And then, I remember, trying to break in over there, and then the Factory and the Improv, and it's definitely undergone a resurgence.
Totally. Did you audition for Mitzi?
Yep, Mitzi herself, yeah. We talked afterward. She was real friendly and nice to me, and then, LA it was an odd place for me to go and live.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you because I've been in New York for a lot the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And you lived here and then moved to New York, and now you came back.
Yeah.
Now you're on Shades of Blue.
Yeah.
But would you have come back if the show wasn't being filmed here, or would you have stayed?
Oh yeah, I came back. I got the show after I'd already moved here. So
you just left LA without telling anyone, because you didn't, no one knew.
Right.
Like all of a sudden I ran into you at the cellar and there you were, and I was like, "Hey, where you been?" And you're like, "I live out here."
I had always, it was like sort of a crisis of conscience. I would wake up in Venice Beach and walk around. I just didn't feel comfortable.
Right.
It was just a weird thing for me. It's like, also LA is so predicated upon the entertainment business in many ways. New York is less like that for me. I have business interests here. I could still get to the clubs. I could still audition. In terms of the acting game, there's more, the people that are going to hire you, it's more the case that they're in the room in Los Angeles. And so there's an opportunity cost to leaving. But for me, there was a peace of mind to returning to New York. And, LA I never loved. It was not my
There's something about this New York to me, man.
Well, I like a city, too, that I can go out and not have the entertainment business be such a part of other people's lives, too.
You're right. Like, there's no normies around, like in LA. That's really a problem too if you're just trying to talk to somebody and just have a regular conversation, and all of a sudden it just comes in like, oh, this person wants to be on a reality show or anything,
Yeah, LA is definitely it's a big city, but as it relates to people in the entertainment business, it feels more like a one-horse town because so many people are in it and everybody's within a few degrees connected to it somehow. And that's just not the case here. So you don't feel that as much.
Well, here, I think what's cool is you can meet people that have regular jobs.
Totally.
Totally. So you can draw on, especially as a writer, because you can really start to...
It's a more dynamic experience.
Yeah.
It's more dynamic, and I guess we are an accumulation of what we put into our heads. There's the nature-nurture part, right? The nature is we are what we are, genetically, chemically, biophysically, but the nurture part of it is like if people spend their time watching, reading tabloids and watching bullshit, then our experience is going to, it's all going to be communicated through that prism. And you can tell when it's deficient. And for me, LA, it was just not as...
Yeah. There's not a lot of depth. It's all surface.
You can find your depth. You find your places. There are plenty of lovely people and places.
Here's how I know.
Yeah.
I've been here for about 6 months off and on.
Yeah.
And no one calls and says, "Where you been, man?" At all.
Right.
At all. And except for maybe Ian Edwards, and my other buddy, Steve Henry.
Right.
Other than that, it's just like... You realize right away, like, oh, I don't matter. I mean, I never thought I mattered, but what I'm saying is,
I know what you mean, but also I think people are in an environment like Los Angeles, especially if you're in the entertainment business. Then you jobs are more temporal, right? So if you're around a demographic where that guy's a doctor, that guy's a policeman, that guy's something else, and also there's another actor, and also somebody else. it's a very different social experience because when you're at a party in Los Angeles, part of what people are doing is trying to source information.
Network.
And it's not their fault.
No, not at all.
It's because it's a business where you need to be able to do that. The hard part is trying to balance out humanity and also finding the next job or the next opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, my brother is a psychologist, and when I'm around him and his friends, like, nobody's looking across the room to see who else walked in because their livelihood isn't predicated on who walked in. It doesn't matter who walked in.
They're not looking over your shoulder.
Not for the most part.
Right.
You know, like, listen, networking is a part of life. It's how we exchange information. It's just a matter of degrees. I don't want to be in an environment where that's taking place at a high rate of speed.
I do feel like the New York comics do have more real conversations.
Yeah.
If we're sitting around at a diner eating, we're not.
There's also more sarcasm too. You know, in LA, it feels more like networking.
Yeah.
Whereas ball busting feels a bit more healthy to me because it's less safe. That you, if we don't want something from each other, if there isn't an ulterior motive, then it frees us up to bullshit with each other and say things that might not be.
Yeah, you know. In LA, you don't want to hurt someone's feelings,
right? Yeah,
because then you might not get on their show.
Right, there's that too, and the culture out there for that and any number of other reasons represents that. It's definitely a more, you know, it's like I could imagine somebody walking into a club in LA and, you know, their head, like having a headshot with, like, it used to be the cellar. If you walked in with like a headshot or talking about some agent, like, you would be ostracized, you know, for playing that game. But it's definitely a tough business on people psychologically. Not that others aren't. It's just that, again, like I'm thinking about my brother's friend, sort of friend of mine too, Greg. He's a research professor at his school. He's I think like a tenured professor. Like, if he's in a room, no aspect of his experience is driven by needing to make a connection.
Yeah.
For the average social experience.
Right.
Whereas in the entertainment business, everybody's always sourcing information because sustained employment doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
You know, you go from place to place. You're a gypsy.
You know, one thing I notice about New York, which is really interesting, like people say, what's the difference? In LA, comedians hang at the club that aren't going on.
Yeah.
Which is really bizarre now that I look at New York. There's no one at the clubs that aren't going on. There's somewhere else getting on. You know, like if you go to the Improv in LA, there'd be like 20 people hanging out that aren't going on.
Yeah.
And I get it, you know, it's to hang out and maybe network and stuff.
Yeah.
But to me, it was always about, I got to find a spot to go on.
I know what you mean. I mean, I could think of situations where there are certainly people hanging around. But yeah, in LA, it was definitely more of a scene.
Yeah, like I've just been at the Stand for a month, and there maybe there's one or two guys, but they go on, you know, like
I know
tomorrow night or something.
Yeah.
But there's not like 20 guys.
Right, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
That's a big difference.
Well, maybe, too, that there are just more, maybe there are more places to get on here. And so, you know, there's less cause.
Yeah, people are out
to
going
clump
on.
up in one place. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you go on every night at the cellar, or how's your schedule now?
It all depends on
you
how
feel
much
like you
I'm
need
on
to go
the
on every
road.
night?
No, I used to. And if I'm trying to work on something specific or getting ready for something, then certainly I would do that.
Yeah.
But no, I don't feel like, I mean, but I also do multiple spots on the weekend, stuff like that. So it's not like there are situations where I would feel like I need it. Not in New York, because at this point I get enough time.
Yeah.
And also, and it depends whether or not I'm on the road much. You know, if I'm on the road, I go to Palm Beach Improv this weekend. I leave on Wednesday, and I'll be there 3-4 days doing 2 hours a night Friday, 2 hours a night Saturday.
Of course.
An hour on Thursday. It's 5 hours of stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I know.
So to run back here, you know, and jump right back on stage, I mean,
Yeah. You do a lot of road work right now?
I wasn't when I was shooting that show, not because I had to work every day as an actor, only because you'd have to, those time period, you didn't know when you were working, so you couldn't just leave on a Wednesday. You know? But now I'm trying to get out more. I want to, I've developed probably another new 30 minutes since the last hour I did, so I'd like to develop another 30 and maybe try to shop an hour at some point, Yeah,
because you haven't had a special in a while, right? I remember you're the one that's the junkyard in the background. Yeah. Is that your only special?
No, I did another hour special since then.
And who was that for?
I ended up doing it. It's like, I really did it. I just made a deal with a production company, and then they go out and shop it. So it aired on Fuse, and then it airs somewhere else, and then I have the tape.
Oh, badass.
But it wasn't something that I was, I mean, it wasn't like the Comedy Central one. But the problem with Comedy Central now is that
people saw it once.
Well, not only, right.
Maybe if it was on that midnight,
right.
And then it just disappears into no man's land, and you do all that work.
That's right.
I know.
It's challenging, and unless you have guaranteed airings, well, one, I hated a lot of the stuff that not a lot of it. I hated a number of things that I did.
What didn't you like about it?
That I thought were weak.
Now, D'Elia's dad directed that, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I thought the production was really good, and I liked the way it looked, and I liked some of the performance stuff. But I remember like acting out bits that hadn't earned the act out yet. Like
you were
the
too
material
big, you think?
wasn't there. It was. I don't mind being big if the thing calls for it, if the piece calls for it, if the joke calls for it. But I remember like strutting around and doing. There was something for me that I really hated about. I remember Woody Allen once saying, "Look at me. I thought I was so cute mincing around on stage." I felt like that. Like, what am I mincing about? Like, concentrate more on.
If the bits weren't strong enough, you went crazy to cover up for it.
Yeah.
It's like when guys get louder. I get it.
And volume. If the bit has earned the volume, do it. Act it out. Do whatever you got to do. But if it hasn't, don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it hadn't earned it, and so I see where there's some air in it that I hate. But that's my job to feel that way, I guess. I mean,
there's no way I think comics are going to look back and say, I love these special, you know what I mean?
Right,
that's really a thing where I made a record in 99, a music record.
Yeah.
And I can hear it today, and I have no cringeworthy moments on it. Wow. And I was really anal about that record.
That's
I know.
great.
Like, I took 2 years to really get it together. And everybody's like, where's your special now? And I was like, what's the rush? Yeah. It's not going to change my career.
Well, listen, maybe it will. And maybe that's great.
Yeah.
But the idea that, and you want to work at a certain pace, and you already have your audience. So what you're doing is you're delivering the special. You work on it for a year and a half or 2 years. You do the thing, and then that material's gone. You start out again. But there's usually a lot of air in it when you work like that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're selling it online. But if it's trying to create a really tight hour, it's going to take time,
Yeah, man. And also, like I thought 2 years ago I was ready.
Yeah.
And now I look at that material and go, oh man, I kind of didn't shoot that. But you can also get into that situation of like constantly thinking you're not ready and then you never do one.
Yeah. Well, it's the whole, that's the balance we want to strike, right? By just, you got to pull the trigger at some point. So we don't want to be neurotic to the degree that it prevents us.
Right.
But at the same time, you want quality control. And so that's just a personal barometer.
Yeah.
But definitely because there are so many places to consume comedy for people now, it's like, I don't know, like, and what does a special mean? It's like it used to be an hour was a real kind of marker. And now it's like, I don't know. Who's
Yeah,
gonna
that's
see
what
it? Who's
that's
gonna
what Burr
pick it, you know?
said. Burr said that people are just doing hours that are features,
Yeah.
so they can go out and headline. It used to be the opposite. You became a headliner and then you did a special.
Yeah,
but
that's
now
right.
it's like do a special so you can become a headliner.
I guess, and like, I don't even know if that helps necessarily.
It
Like, you
doesn't,
can
yeah.
have an hour. It doesn't mean that you're
Yeah.
going to go out and.
I work the
Yeah.
same rooms a lot of people have hours out. You
Oh
know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
totally, yeah.
I believe in the new format of Netflix is doing these 15 minutes.
Makes
And
more
I
sense.
believe
Yeah.
because of this ADD world,
Who's
that you,
sitting there for an hour?
yeah,
anymore?
you come out with your lightning, and then people go, "Did you see that guy?" Because when you look at all the guys that became big, it was all because
Tonight Show
people
stuff.
chopped their hour down and put them on YouTube, and then
Right,
those
yeah.
went viral, like a Russell
Yeah,
Peters
yep.
or the great Burr one of him shitting on Philly
Yeah,
and all that.
totally.
Those become viral, and that's what people have time for in their life of their ADD
They
world.
learn that with talk shows now.
Yeah.
A lot of the viewership isn't just generated in the hour format on NBC. They chop it all
Yeah.
up and get it online, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. People watch half their content on their phone. It's like,
Exactly.
who's sitting down for an hour of Richard Pryor at this point?
Yeah,
You know, it's
which
like-
is sad because
sad in some ways, yeah.
But it is also good in other ways where you can, consume stuff on the go.
Yeah.
Like lines don't bother me anymore. Like at the airport.
Oh, lines,
I'm
right.
like, yeah, line.
There's so many things to do.
I
Yeah.
just look at this phone and I'll be through this in
I know.
six
In-
YouTube videos.
Six videos, yeah. Yeah, I know. It's it's a new world, right? It's a new world, and we got to figure out how to exist in it. with,
Yep. You got
Yeah.
Shades of Blue now. And what are
Oh,
you?
yeah,
This
Shades
was
of
the
Blue.
second season.
yeah. Second season.
It's J-Lo.
J-Lo and
My
Ray,
girl,
Ray
Drea.
Liotta. Yeah, Drea and Ray Liotta, and yeah, it's yeah,
Ray
it's-
Liotta.
It's a good gig. Liotta's an interesting
He's
dude.
awesome.
Yeah, he's great. He's a great actor, and yeah, it's funny. It's like
How many times you auditioned for it?
just one time. One time was it? Yeah, one time. But several takes. And
Yep.
went through the process and all that, and yeah, and then the job ended up lasting longer than we thought it would, or probably than they thought it would. But
Right.
yeah, acting's interesting. It can be interesting. It's but all these things that it's a job. You do the thing, and then
Yeah.
it comes to an end, and then you got to look for another. It's a strange business.
It is, man. Acting to me is always a little boring because you're just sitting around waiting
Oh,
to
if
go on.
people had any idea what
I
it's
know.
really like on a set. I mean, luckily, what was interesting about doing Shades for a comedian is that comedians often don't get a chance to do drama.
Right.
And so I do enjoy that aspect of it. But most of the time on a set, it's not like you get ready, you go up on stage, you do your thing, and you get off.
Yeah.
Set is all day.
Yeah.
You wait and you wait, and then the makeup and the works, and go back to the thing, and lunch. It's
Oh man, and
and then hopefully you get some good scenes in between somewhere where you really get to experience something creative. But
lay into it, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I've done a few movies, and
Yeah.
I think there's like two scenes that I really liked, where
Yeah.
where you really start to feel the as cliche as it sounds, the craft.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
you're like, because with me with acting, it's not like stand up. I do stand up every night. If I
Yeah.
acted every day, I'd probably be fantastic.
Sure. Yeah.
But I do it like once a year. And
of
when
course.
I'm in there,
The more
you're
time
like,
you spend on a set,
Yeah.
the easier it gets. I mean, and hopefully the sooner the more you can just fall into the experience of the character, or whatever. But if something's precious in that moment for whatever reason, or because I'm trying to get them to keep me on or see something, I don't want to push. It can fuck with the performance, but it's definitely. I remember hearing a radio show. They were talking about how what they say. They're like somebody could win a day on the set of watching. Like, if you were a spectator on a set outside of one or two scenes,
Yeah.
it's going to be the most boring day you've ever had in your life.
yeah. Right, I brought some cousins to Desperate Housewives back in the day. My boy was on the show.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, that's our favorite show ever.
Yeah.
So we went and they watched a couple scenes and they were like, let's go to the craft services.
Yeah,
they
yeah,
were already bored.
Always.
It was like their dream to go.
Nothing, you know how that, like, I don't know, the perception is often different from reality.
Yeah.
Has never been more true than in certain parts of the entertainment business, like a set. The perception is so dramatically different from the reality that people have, you know?
It's great. You get to shoot it in the city, right?
Oh, that part's great.
How amazing is that?
I get in my car in the morning, I go to Queens, you know, show up on a set. Yeah, no, listen, it's good to have a job like that. But you know, then those jobs end and you got to go looking for another job.
You guys know season 3 or no? You don't know?
Don't know.
Yeah.
Oh no, the season 3 was the one that we did.
Oh, okay.
So it was on for a season. Then I was there for 2 and 3.
Right.
I don't know if it'll continue.
Wow.
No, I don't know.
Well, dude, man, thanks for doing the podcast.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks for coming out.
I've been wanting you on forever. Got a great book here. I'm going to read this, Road Dog.
Yeah, keep
Life
that one.
and Reflections from the Road as a Stand-Up Comic. Colin Quinn did he put a quote here, one of the funniest and most personal books I've ever read.
Yes, sir.
Did you write this yourself?
Yes, sir. Every word of it.
And how long did it take you?
Oh, a few years.
Few years. Like, how would you write it? Would you just sit down when you remembered memories? Because I was thinking about just starting whenever something comes to me, because shit comes to you when you're laying in bed. You go, I can't believe I can't. I forgot all about that.
Well, you know, the structure came from, I was just thinking about, I initially thought of it as 12 months, as in 12 months on the road. So it would go from one place to another place to another place over the course of 12 months. And then within that, it would just be the story of a life.
Right.
You know, within whatever's happening on the road at that time. And so that's how I structure it. There's all different ways to structure it. Most of the time, obviously, it's just chronological.
Is there stuff here, though, back from your childhood and stuff?
Yeah, it starts. It's reflections. What's the log line below? Life and reflections from the road as a stand-up comic.
So you
it's
might
all
be
of it.
laying in your
It's
room
life
and
as a
something comes to
stand-up.
you.
Exactly. You're laying there in bed. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I forgot to ask you before we split? How do you write? Do you write on stage or do you actually sit down and write?
Both. You come up with a premise and then sometimes I'll sit and write it out. You know, I mean, I should put more energy into writing stuff out. The more I write out, the more likely I am to come up with something worth keeping on stage. But it's always a both, you know.
Right. Yeah. It's that's such a weird animal, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I sit down and I'm writing and I'm just like, this is all my golds come from just going up with the premise.
Always. But
So
if you have the
organic.
premise and you work through some other options to find a punchline or some other aspect of the humor to tag it, you know, if you work it out some on paper, you won't find out what's necessarily funny by writing it on paper, but you'll have another go-to on stage.
Right.
And then you just probabilities you'll come up with more material.
Instead of going to the same fallout every time and it's not working, you're constantly opening a door that's closed.
Yep.
There's so many bad things, and you see yourself doing it, but you still do it. You go, man, I got these bad habits.
Yeah.
And I'm still in them. That's that book, what is that, The War of Art?
I never read it.
It's like it's a book. It's a great read about why you fail.
Right.
You know what I mean?
In art,
and it's
in
always
any creative
yourself
endeavor.
shooting yourself in the foot nonstop, and it shows you all the pitfalls.
Yeah. I'm
Well,
sure.
thanks, man.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you,
doing
buddy.
it.
Yeah.
Go get this book. Do you do social media?
Yeah, you know, I'll go on once in a while. I'm not a big social media guy.
I didn't think so.
No, but I go on, you know, Instagram, you know, all that Duff Davidoff on Instagram.
All right.
You know, I send stuff out. I'm on the road. You know, I send things out, and I should probably spend more energy doing it, but I won't.
I'd love to work with you sometime, man.
I need, we should do something at some point. When I get a good gig where I can bring somebody out, most of the markets, they won't let me bring somebody.
Yeah.
If you sell enough tickets, something like that, you can sort of choose your guy. And
Of course.
Yeah.
I'd love to do it, though, just to spend a
that'd be
weekend
fun.
with it. It would
That'd
be
be
fun,
fun.
man.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let There Be Talk. And don't forget to get his new book, Road Dog. And thanks, guys. See you later.